Hey everyone, today we're looking at the 10 most popular theories for DBD, these being the most widespread theories within the community. Let's get into it. The White Eyes theory is maybe DBD's most popular theory, and is actually only partially a theory, as it's most definitely rooted in fact. The theory goes that all of the killers with white glowing eyes are having their vision manipulated by the entity to see the survivors as different people. The primary target of this theory is Deathslinger, who canonically has this happen to him. As he enters the realm, the lore directly states that he sees the boys who bullied him, the executives who took advantage of him, and again, Henry Bayshaw. He doesn't, however, appear to see any survivors. Therefore, the assumption is that Deathslinger sees the survivors as the people who wronged him. Their appearance is altered by the entity. It seemingly does this as otherwise there's a good chance Deathslinger wouldn't want to hunt the survivors. Whilst Caleb was a brutal guy, he wasn't just a reckless killer, before coming to the trials at least. He captured bounties and he largely took them in alive, so it seems the entity does this manipulation tactic specifically to get Caleb to obey it and follow the trial rules without issue. The theory gets more interesting and varyingly plausible when introducing the other characters with white eyes though, these being Wraith, Billy, Doctor, and Spirit. For Wraith, the theory continues to make sense, as he isn't a willing killer during his lore, and only kills when absolutely pushed to, killing some soldiers when he's young, and later his evil boss AZHYMOVS, who made Wraith unknowingly kill likely hundreds of people. Therefore, there's little reason for Wraith to want to kill the survivors, who are innocent, largely. Therefore, the entity likely changes his vision to see them as people who wronged him, like AZHYMOVS. Billy is much the same, although somewhat contested as his eyes are very faint, but they do appear white if you look very closely. Billy did seem to recklessly kill, but he'd definitely serve the entity more willingly if he hunted down his cruel father or the sheriff and his deputies over the survivors who he has no beef with. Doctor is often included in this theory too, but I don't think he should be. Whilst his eyes are a glowing white, they appear quite differently and seem to actually originate from Doctor's high electrical charge, or the inexhaustible spark that was put inside of him by the entity. I think his eyes are actually just large balls of energy and don't indicate he's being manipulated, because, I mean, he has no problem with killing. And I'm not even sure who the entity would manipulate him into seeing. I don't think he hates any person in particular, he sees pretty much everyone as just a subject to experiment on, even himself, so it wouldn't make much sense if his vision was being manipulated. Spirit is the final one and also very plausible, although her eyes do appear differently, being larger balls of white. This seems to just be a stylistic choice by the entity though, to keep her in theme as an Onryo. Spirit is one of the most innocent characters on the killer side, and would by no means attack the survivors if she truly knew what she was doing. Therefore, it's highly likely she sees them as her father, or maybe even her ancestors who she hates. When Rin agreed to come to the realm, in return for servitude, she asked for revenge on her father, so she likely sees the survivors as her father. The White Eyes theory may appear to have some holes, as there's a few characters you could argue should probably have white eyes, as otherwise they wouldn't kill, such as Artist or the twins. However, even in these cases, these characters tend to have other motivations going for them. For twins, Charlotte wants to protect Victor, so that's why she serves the entity. In Artist's case, she is more than likely being kept in a place of perpetual torment and likely guilt, the same guilt she felt at the moment she was taken, meaning she may be more susceptible to serving the entity whilst in this form. The entity also just likely did more direct manipulation to her, as she literally appears like a crow. This is the core of the White Eyes theory. However, there's been many theories also surrounding what the other eye colors might mean, such as the killers with completely black eyes. What do you think? Nia is the entity is a theory that originated as a joke, but has sort of gained traction over the years as a plausible theory, and has been broadened out to a sort of blanketing theory about the entity potentially being one of the characters. A more recent example of this being Sable is the entity. As a joke, this started way back in 2016 when Nia released, and it wasn't really grounded in anything serious. Nia was referred to as the entity due to her appearance largely, with her soulless eyes, her face lacking texture, and many calling her ugly, therefore meaning she must be the entity, the spider god in the sky. It was from here where people built upon it. If something strange happened in-game involving Ania, people would point to it as evidence for her being the entity. There are other somewhat strange references too that seem to hint toward Nia being more than she lets on. Her perk Streetwise, for example, shows off her street tag Mash Sticks, which looks not too dissimilar from the entity's language, interestingly. Nia also has access to abilities typically restricted to killers, like not stumbling when falling from a great height, or being able to crouch particularly quickly. Certain lore mentions suggest she has an inhuman ability too, with her being referred to as far from normal and to have nimble cat-like abilities, with her said to further disappear for days on end. Her base outfit seems to depict a crow possibly, a symbol of the entity. She further has a developer vest, which depicts the entity and its claws, and even has a t-shirt depicting the spine chill cat, suggesting she knew about the realm and its imagery before even arriving here. How else would she get this exact image on a piece of her clothing? Benedict Baker also has an interesting entry on her, saying that Nia was like a shadow that moved without sound, suggesting she may be more than a sneaky urban artist. So it's a theory crafted originally from a joke, which expanded out to have more credibility as time went on. Although I would hardly say the theory is credible. It's still a very silly theory. Which is also why no one's ever made a video on it before, if you tried to find one, aside my one I made on April Fool's Day. We are the entity is another highly popular theory, and this one goes simply that we as the player are the entity. This is used to explain events that may otherwise appear strange in-game. The big one being the moments when the fourth wall is broken. For example, the way Trickster looks back at us and winks, this being a sign that we're the entity. He's winking at us as he's on good terms with the entity, and he's likely just being a bit cheeky. Then we have characters like Vecna, who are somewhat threatening, with some killers even opting to directly attempt to attack us or scare us like Unknown. This is really the core of the theory, that our presence in the game is that of the entities, with us being largely omnipotent and able to view all areas of the trials and characters in the lobby. Survivors do come into this theory as well, with some of them speaking out loud in the lobby despite them being alone.
What is this place?
But some of the more bold characters, such as Ash, choosing to directly confront us at times and even call us out when we're just waiting around.
Can we do something here?
This theory also explains certain things like the red stain that comes out the front of the killers, this being a sign of us, the entity, watching from within them, causing this red light to emit. A similar red light being found in the basement, which is said to be the entity's heart. I do think this theory makes sense too, lore-wise, as the entity is a creature that feeds on emotion, and you as the player likely play the game to feel something, for some kind of emotion, feeling excitement or frustration or anger maybe at some points too. We are feeding on this as we play, and therefore we, or you, are the entity. Plague started the Black Vale is a theory that's been around for a while but has gained more popularity recently, with the theory going that Plague, or Adiris, the high priestess of ancient Babylon, was the origin for the Black Vale, the cult which worships the entity. The core reasoning behind this theory is that the Black Vale is said to be an ancient organization, and Plague of course was from ancient Babylon. The both of them also worship the entity, with Plague being highly devoted to it, and seeing it as her god after the entity confirms her faith by whispering to her. The Black Vale's origins as an organization are also very mysterious, with there being no core origin point. Adiris would have been very famed throughout Babylon and the surrounding areas for her devotion, but also how she deals with the disastrous and destructive plague that hits the city, with her sacrificing so much and even her own body to save her people. When she finally falls ill too, she leaves the city and mysteriously disappears in a cave, with there being witnesses. Yet her body never found, but many told tales of her return. It's also likely that after her disappearance, the plague did eventually clear up, which many may have accredited to her sacrifice to their god. It's here where it's likely that the cult of the Black Vale was formed, as the core idea behind the Black Vale is that they see the realm as a higher plane to ascend to. Those who worship the entity want to one day reach the realm, much like Adiris did. So those who witnessed the disappearance of Adiris likely went back to the other Babylonians and told them stories of her disappearance and how she ascended connected to the realm of their god, thus forming, properly, the Black Vale. However, it remains a theory still, as there's no distinct origin written about where the Black Vale truly came from, nor what happened to Adiris' followers, or Babylon after she was taken. And whilst there is similar ritualistic prayers between the two groups, as seen with Tori in the current day, and Plague back then, there is still a clear difference between how they perform this, possibly suggesting this isn't 100% the case. Equally, this has surely been developed over thousands of years and will have changed, so, this isn't exactly a full stop to the theory either. Myers wandered into the realm. This is a very popular theory that came about as a result of Myers' lore not having any description of how or when he was taken. Despite this being a common theme for almost every other character, the lore always states in some way the arrival of a fog or a character disappearing. Myers' lore just focuses on him as a character and sort of describes him. This has led many to believe that Myers was never invited nor intended to come to the realm, but instead managed to wander in somehow, possibly whilst chasing Laurie. This theory also links up to the whole theory that Myers is resistant against the entity somewhat, and its trials and its rules, as he does defiant acts like killing survivors sooner than he's meant to with his tombstone add-ons, although this doesn't quite work anymore, as he doesn't have those add-ons anymore. Myers does still play rather differently though to almost any other character, suggesting a level of defiance potentially, or just the fact that Myers is somewhat of a wild card, I suppose. A character who was never meant to come to the trials but just rocked up one day and the entity had to simply deal with it. This also explains why Laurie was given such strong perks, as the entity hadn't accounted for the arrival of evil incarnate and so gave her necessary protections in order to survive her pursuer, who saw her as his obsession. We of course also have the quote from likely Benedict Baker, who commented on Myers' arrival to the realm rather interestingly, saying, "He does not strike me as someone who even went unwillingly to this place. Is there more to this being than I can fathom?" Suggesting that Myers chose to came here, or he did not resist it at the very least. Which is interesting because this sort of hints toward the fact that other killers may not have wanted to come here, but the case for most of them is that they actually do. I suppose this was written very early into the game's lifecycle though, and all the killers who came out before Myers could reasonably be assumed to not want to be here originally. So this theory doesn't really have evidence directly, and is more of a gap filler to make sense of how or why Myers was taken to the realm, and further why he acts differently to other killers. I think the likely moment he was taken was just after he fell from the window after Loomis shot him and he disappears. This seems like a realistic and almost perfect moment for the entity to snatch him. Who knows, maybe if he ever returns to the game, we could get some more fleshed out lore for how he arrived. Unknown predicted the future. This is a more recent theory that arose with the release of The Unknown, an incredibly mysterious character and maybe the most mysterious of the entire DBD roster, with no one actually knowing what it is or where it really came from. Another strange quality of Unknown is its voice lines.
"I will not be denied my happiness. I, the nameless legend. You must be alone here."
Which often appear rather cryptic and potentially even meaningless to some level. Some lines are clearly taken from its victims and repeated, but others sound like something coming from the creature itself. These lines are where the theory kicks in, for the most part, with people noticing that they actually connected to the releases post-Unknown. Unknown came out in March of 2024, and every subsequent chapter release seems to have been referenced in some way, both by Unknown, but also sometimes additionally on its map, Greenville Square, home of one of many of the entity's overlaps. The first chapter it referenced was Dungeons and Dragons in June of 2024, with the line,
"I lived in dungeons long forgotten."
A clear reference to Dungeons and Dragons. The month after was the release of Lara Croft, the Tomb Raider, which was referenced with the line,
"Prepare for the expedition."
Lara of course going on an expedition to Yamatai in her lore and story. Then we got to Dracula's release in August, seemingly referenced with the line,
"Tonight the world at my feet."
Although this is the most tenuous connection up to this point. However, there's more to support this. On Greenville, Unknown's map, we can find various posters referencing a vampire of some kind, and in the arcade we can find a machine which has characters eerily similar to those featured in Castlevania. We then reach November of 2024 and the release of Houndmaster, referenced by the line,
"Have you seen my dog?"
because she's got a dog. We then reach Tokyo Ghoul in March 2025, connected to the line,
Hunger. Intolerable. Hunger.
a reference to Kaneki's intolerable ghoulish hunger. There are further map-based references, with the cinema's featured film being The Ghoul's Lament. The final chapter seemingly referenced was FNAF, with the line,
Nobody leaves tonight.
referencing the unlikelihood of you surviving 5 Nights at Freddy's. There's finally the line,
I'll send you a postcard.
which appears to be a reference to The Walking Dead, but that again is relatively tenuous, I'd argue. This is where it seems to end though. It all seems very plausible to me actually, and to actually hold quite a bit of weight. I would argue out of the theories in this video, this one does have quite a bit of evidence, depending on how you classify evidence, I guess. I mean, you don't get this many coincidences, surely. With references made both in lines but also within the map, it begs the question of what does Unknown know? How much does it know? Spirit's father caused Adam's train derailment. One of the most popular theories, interestingly, surrounds Adam and the Spirit and how they connect. Every chapter has a connection between its two characters, the survivor and the killer, in some way. Whether this is a direct connection, like with Trickster and Yun-Jin, or Jeff and the Legion, or more thematic, like with David and Huntress, or Kate and Clown. However, there's not necessarily a distinct connection between Adam and the Spirit, with them certainly never meeting. However, Adam gets taken by the entity in his lore after his train is derailed suddenly, and crashes. This is theorized to be connected to Spirit and her father specifically, with a large part of Spirit's lore focusing on the entity whispering to her father, and causing him to slowly fall into insanity, with the building stress of the family's legacy and estate collapsing. Rin's father is let go from his job, with the lore stating the company had launched a defective production line that was costing them dearly. Someone had to be held accountable, and Rin's father fitted the bill perfectly. He was fired after 22 years of service. It's therefore theorized that this is the connection. This stated faulty production line is actually for trains or train parts, and so this production line unfortunately shipped and caused Adam's train to later derail, forming a connection between the two characters, but also potentially giving insight into the entity's cunning, with it perhaps planning this all along to take both characters at once, manipulate Rin's father and take him, and also take Adam at the same time by causing him to mess with the production line in some way. Wraith rings his bell to warn the survivors that he's coming. This is another highly popular theory, and one that came about due to Wraith not exactly fitting the bill for your regular killer. His lore makes clear that he doesn't really like to kill, and he only seems to do it when the situation calls for it, or in highly emotional moments. Basically, he doesn't seem like the kind of guy to want to harm the innocent survivors. Therefore, it's theorized that the reason for him ringing his bell is to warn the survivors that he's coming. This interestingly works out really well with his lore too. During his lore, he's given the job of warning his village of oncoming soldiers, to make sure everyone can hide in time and get to safety. However, Philip fails to do this, and it's partly what causes his grandma and the other villagers to get killed. Of course, Philip is only 10 at the time, so it's hardly his fault in that sense, with him being incredibly scared. However, during his lore, he clearly seems to blame himself for this happening. He thinks he is guilty for not saving his people. Therefore, now in the realm, with the entity forming his father's bell into Wraith's power, it seems possible that the reason Wraith rings it to cloak and uncloak is to provide a warning of danger, the warning that he is coming for them, and the only warning he is reasonably able to give them without outright defying the entity. The entity probably likes it in fact because it creates more fear in lots of situations. An act he does to redeem himself for him being unable to save his village previously. This theory would contradict the White Eyes theory though, as it would suggest Wraith is fully aware of what he's doing. If he saw the survivors as his evil boss, I doubt he would care to warn him. So the two can't really work in conjunction, but both are pretty interesting theories, I'd say. Pyramid Head is punishing the entity. This is another very popular theory and came about around the time of Pyramid Head's release, as Pyramid Head introduced a new mechanic when he was added, which was the ability to cage survivors instead of hooking them. Pyramid Head was also able to use a mini-mori, the first of its kind for a killer power, where you were able to finish the survivor off by your own hand instead of using the hooks. Finally, he directly plants his blade into the trial grounds, which many have viewed as rather defiant as an act, and potentially even painful for the entity, as the blade is is literally tearing into the entity itself, with the entire realm and trial being built out of auric cells, or the entity's cells, basically. So the theory goes that all of these are intentional and are all done in punishment to the entity for its wrong deeds. Pyramid Head's presence in the realm is rather confusing after all. Pyramid Head was created to help James Sunderland specifically, to aid him in moving on, but also identifying his wrongdoings and guilty conscience for the murder of Mary. Pyramid Head joins the realm after being directly invited to it by the entity, accepting this, but why? The survivors certainly aren't guilty in the same way James was. Some may be more morally grey, but we only have a handful of arguably truly bad survivors, many of which weren't even in the realm by the time Pyramid Head arrived. So what exactly is he doing here? Is the exact question which sparked this theory. Instead of him being here to punish the survivors, he's here to punish the entity itself, possibly as Pyramid Head sees it fit, or maybe by the entity's own request, as it's an extra source of emotion, or maybe just because the entity's kind of into it. Regardless, many believe that Pyramid Head is partially rebelling, but also potentially punishing the entity, frustrating it by cutting its trials short and robbing it of food, essentially. General perks are from voided characters. This theory focuses on the general or universal perks that are available to all characters in the game, without needing to first level up. Many of these perks contain quotes from characters we don't know and who don't appear in the trials, and many have faces featured in them which also don't appear in the trials in any way. The survivor perks are particularly interesting, with them featuring faces that seem familiar potentially, but don't exactly match the survivors we have. Resilience, Premonition, and This Is Not Happening have a character and a quote, but without a name attached to the quote, suggesting the name of this person was lost in time. Other perks, such as Dark Sense, feature quotes which do originate from a person, Dark Senses being from someone named Murph, with them clearly referring to something occurring within the trials, or No One Left Behinds, which features Clyde. All of these characters said to be from the Lost Tapes, suggesting that these characters are all lost in some way, and they were potentially once survivors of the realm, with them having their own teachable perks, which are now available to everyone. It's therefore theorized that these were the survivors before our own, ones who were tossed to the void, the desolate space where the entity discards characters it has fully drained of emotion. This would explain their partial completion, why some have their face remembered, others their name, others simply their words, but none are truly complete. All of them are fading from memory the longer they remain dead, within the void, leaving us only with the remnants of who they once were. We can kind of see this too when a license gets removed from the game, with the licensed character's featured face being switched out for someone else, or the perk losing its quote. Once a survivor leaves, they're slowly forgotten by the others, but their perk remains in some form. It's rather haunting thinking of it this way, but it does make a lot of sense. Not only are they forgotten, but the other survivors have to remember them, all whilst going through the trials themselves and likely losing their memory partially along the way. This is the same on the killer side too, except to a greater extent. I guess as there's less people to remember them. I doubt the other killers remember one another or form as close bonds as the survivors do. Therefore they fade far sooner. It's interesting considering this as well, as we can paint an image of who or what existed before the current trials, like a killer with antlers, or one that was able to actually hear the entity's whisper, suggesting they were very close to the spider god. It's rather fascinating, I think. Alright, well, that's gonna do it. I do hope you enjoyed, and be sure to let me know your theories, or ones you'd consider more popular than the ones here, down below. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.